welcome to Let's Talk Macarthur. Today's guest is an educator, an entrepreneur, a family-orientated community leader from Wave Learning. Welcome, Councillor Margaret Chivers.
Thank you, Matt.
And how are you today?
I'm really, really well. It's Freedom Day.
It's Freedom Day, it certainly is. We might as well start. Let's start at the beginning. So earlier life for Margaret, where did it all begin and how did it get to the journey of education?
How did it get to the journey of education? It started when I was 8.
Mm.
And I was sitting in a classroom and I was watching, and I was watching a teacher, and it wasn't my teacher, so I'm not really sure how I ended up in this classroom, but I was watching a teacher mark handwriting books for her class. So this was, very, very early 1960s, very, very early 1960s. And I was watching her, and she had a little box, and in that box were gold stars.
Yep. And
she would open each handwriting book from each person in her class, and she would look at their handwriting, and then she'd pick up her pen and she'd write a comment, and then she'd pick up a gold star and she'd lick it, because that was when they were gummy. She'd lick it and then she'd stick it on their page. And I looked at her and I just thought, I want to do that for the rest of my life. So when I was 8, I decided I would teach, and that was my focus when I was 8. And I worked toward that from that minute on. I knew then that I needed to teach.
It's amazing. It's a rarity for, and I talk to a lot of young people and that sort of stuff, and it's a rarity for a lot of them to have a focus as to what it is that they want to do, even when they're in the HSC year and then they're gearing up to go to university or college or TAFE. But they still don't know what it is that they want to do. My daughter has got a friend who's doing her master's and PhD. She still doesn't know what it is that she wants to do. So to have clarity from a younger age, whereas my daughter Lauren, she's a high school teacher, she knew from an early age too that she wanted to teach, and all her education was geared up to that pathway and direction. So it's interesting. It's the one. It seems to be a very, very early focus for those that are in education, that they love it from an early age and that they work towards that, whereas we don't see that with a lot of other careers.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people worry about what I should do, what my marks are going to allow me to do, instead of looking inward and saying, what do I love? And what is it that you really love to do? And if you love to do something, go explore that, because that's what you're going to be really, really good at. And I know over the years I've watched teachers in my schools, and some have loved teaching, and others have endured teaching, and the ones who loved it were happier. So I just think life is so short, and we are here for such a short time that we need to not waste it on doing a job that we wake up in the morning and think, oh, okay, I'll go, but I don't spring out of bed. Well, you need to do that, and if you're not, then you might need to reassess what you're doing. And I don't know that gets harder and harder. As the years have gone on, I understand that that's harder. But that would be my message to everybody: do what you love, because you'll be really, really good at it.
Yeah, it's really good advice. And only a couple of weeks ago, I saw an interesting chart, and it was weeks of your life. And it's quite confronting when you say you have, you add it up to say 100 years, and you actually put your little gold stars or red stars for all the weeks that you've already completed, and then you realize, well, geez, I've already used up over half the weeks that I've had allocated to me. I better make the most out of what I've got left. So that's really good advice. Mm-hmm. So you did some teaching. How did it all come about to set up? Because I believe it was 2004 that you set up Brainwave.
We're 20 years old this year.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, so 20 years ago, Brainwave happened. So I'd always, I guess I'd always sort of loved teaching, but I always thought when I played as a child, when I played, I didn't sort of, we lived a long way from anywhere, and I didn't have a lot of friends, so I really was very insular, I suppose. I was a reader, and my books were my friends. And then when I played as if I had a business, and I had a rickety old table and a chair set up in the backyard in the laundry that was right down the back of the yard. And I just shuffle paper and make notes and tick things off, and I just pretended that I had a business. So all the while I knew that I was going to teach, and I loved teaching, and then I became executive, because good teachers hopefully become executive. So I became executive, and I became an assistant principal, and then I became a deputy principal, and then I became a relieving principal. And the more of the ladder of education that I climbed, I did less and less of what I loved. And what I loved was teaching children. And I became further and further away from children. And I knew that that wasn't good for my soul. I could feel that. And I knew that I always thought that I would be good at business. I didn't know why I thought that, but I thought that I just would like to give it a go. And so took a huge leap of faith, and walked away from school just at the point where it was nuts to do that. And people said that to me, "Are you crazy at your age? You know, superannuation. And I just went, yeah, and superannuation's money, and I get that. But why? I don't want to die not knowing this. I need to explore this. And it was a risk, but I don't take uncalculated risks ever. So we did it, and we had 100% growth from the first year. And that was the biggest challenge, because then I had to manage that growth. And that was it sounds wonderful. Oh, wow. You know, you've got year upon year upon year of 100% growth, and you go, yeah, that sounds really, really great. But you've got to then manage that. And but we did, and we navigated our way through it. And then I was back doing, then I had combined the two things. So I was back with children teaching, and I was running a business. And that's when I realised that business is all about relationship. That's what it's about. It's about when you say you're going to do something, you do it. When you stuff up, you say, I stuffed up, I was wrong, we were wrong, I'm sorry, how can I make amends? It's not covering up. And it's giving people what you would love to get from a service that you used, or because we're a service. So it was, how would I have wanted to have been treated? How would I have wanted my child to have been treated if it was my child coming to Brainwave? Mm-hmm. So it all kind of made sense to me that now this is what I was meant to do. I was meant to educate within a business that I had control of. And that was complete joy for me. It was when my soul kind of went, that's it, this is where you should be.
Nice. It's combining all those things. It takes a lot of courage to do that. And then once you get through that first year, as you say, where you have incredible growth, and making sure you're setting up, because not only are you providing the service, you're setting up your processes and systems and administration and regulations and all of these things that are on top of it. So how does the service offering look today as compared to 20 years ago?
I think that 20 years ago, I remember when we left the office at night, I would put the phone on. I would transfer the phone to my mobile, so that if anybody rang the landline during the weekend, that I would answer it. And I remember one night sitting in a service station, and Graham and my husband was getting petrol, and I was sitting there, and it was Friday night, and we worked until 8, and the phone the phone diverted to my mobile, and my mobile rang, and I answered it. And one of the parents of my brainwave children was on the other end of the phone. I'll never forget it. And she said, "Why are you answering the phone? I was just ringing you to leave a message." And she said, "What are you doing? It's 9:30 at night." And she ran her own business, this lady. And I said, "Because you rang me, so I answered." And she said, "Right." So anyway, what I was going to say was blah, blah, blah. And like last night on Facebook, I got a Facebook message asking me about our first aid courses at 11:45. And I answered them at 11:45. And yes, we're 20 years on, and yes, we're successful, and yes, 20 years have gone under the bridge, but they messaged me when they could message me. So now I'll answer them when it suits them. And so I guess the answer to your question is not much has changed. Service has to be exemplary. You cannot say, "Oh, I'll get back to you on that," and then not get back to you. When we train our first aid students, and we train so many of them all over Greater Sydney and here in Campbelltown, we ask them to give us written feedback on the course that they just completed. A lot of those students will ask a question, a first aid based question that they were thinking of that they didn't ask while the course was happening, or they just wanted clarification on something. They're all pulled out the following morning, and they're given to my husband, who is the health services facilitator, and he calls them personally and gives them the answer to their question. And people are shocked. People are just shocked, and people will ring and leave a message, and if the phones are super busy and they have to leave a message, people ring them back straight away. We are checking the phone lines all the time, and people say, "Oh, thank you for ringing me back." And I just find it odd. Why would you thank someone for ringing you back? That's their job to ring you back. Yep. So yeah, what we did at the beginning was all the physical things we put in place, like the uniforms and the number plates on the cars, and we picked colours and we picked a name and we did all that. But that's just window dressing, you know, like you've got to actually have a heart as a business, and you've got to connect. You've got to connect with people, and you've got to understand that everybody's very, very different, and you've got to meet the needs of everybody, and you've got to communicate with people at their own level. And I guess that comes from the education background that we brought to this business, that all children are different, and those children just grow up to be adults, and then they're all different as well. And it's relationships. And a lot of the people who, you know, the kids I taught in Brainwave are now, you know, 24, 25 years old. And I'm friends on Facebook with their parents, and I'm following their journeys through life. And I see a lot of them in here, you know, training first aid. So it's a really lovely job I have. I'm very blessed. I'm very grateful.
Nice. So with the courses that are available through Wave Learning, what's available through Wave? So obviously there's the first aid courses.
Our main core business is children's services. So we train childcare workers, childcare educators throughout the state. So we have, so people, childcare centres will ring us and say, I need to put someone on, they're going to be a trainee. And then we train that person through to graduation. And traineeships are done in very different ways, and we do it the best way, which is the right way, and that's our. We have trainers, full-time trainers, and they are driving our cars that are branded, that are wrapped with our logo, and they're zipping all over the place from the Hunter Valley, Newcastle, down to Narra, all over the place. And will go into a centre, and we might have 5 trainees in that centre, and they will be there every 5 weeks on the dot. They walk in the door, they sit down, they meet with each student, they talk about the assessment task, they hand an assessment task over, they talk about the one that they're going to do next. Then the next girl comes in, then the next student, then the next student, then they get in their car and they go to the next centre. And a lot of people don't do traineeships like that. They don't do the whole, I'll invest in the car and the trainer to actually go out on the road. They check in on them. And we don't check in on them, we train them. Because when we went into way of learning and we morphed into way of learning, it's the same as when it was brainwave. It was exactly the same, whether it was a 5-year-old student or a student who's a trainee. We make good educational decisions, and then the business just falls into place. But if we don't base what we do here on the student, it's all going to fall down. And we all understand that, and our staff that come and work for us here, I walk around the office all day and I just talk about students, and their education is paramount to them. We are in a life-changing business, and we need to focus on that every single day. For someone that gets a first aid certificate, that could be the highest level of training that they've ever achieved, and that's a really big deal for them. And so we need to keep them in the same regard as somebody who finishes a diploma of children's service with us. So it's all about the student, always has been. And I remember back, and I guess this sort of says it all, right at the beginning of Brainwave, we had 9 students. We weren't a franchise. No one knew us. No one had heard of us. And I had, on the first week of Brainwave, I had 2 Year 4 students in a group, and I took the group, and Graham was in the office, and I taught these 2 Year 4 boys, and I realised that one was probably 18 months ahead of the other one. And I thought, I can't teach one and give them the attention they need, and I can't do it at the same time as the other one. So I went into the office and I said to Graham, you have to open a group and take the other boy, which was a mad business decision, but it was the right educational decision.
Yeah.
And we did that, and we still do that now. So
awesome.
That's the answer to your question. It's all about the student. What does the student need? We need to provide that.
Yeah, I find in a lot of businesses, and certainly throughout my career, I've always trained people based on speed of response, which is absolutely fantastic to hear that you've got the same philosophy. I get inquiries online at 11:45, 12 o'clock, whatever as well, and do the same thing. And it's really interesting how many people don't do that, which is really sad. I've got a young couple at the moment, first home buyers. They've been looking for 12 months, but no real estate agents have given them the time of the day because they're at a lower end of the market. And they're just looking for help and advice. And I've been doing that over the last couple of months with them. And we're now at a point where they're looking at purchasing a house and land package. Plus, they've got friends who want to purchase one too. So now I need to find an extra one. So it's all about building relationships with people and genuinely going out to assist and help them the best that you absolutely can. So you preempted my next question, which was in regards to team culture. So you've given me a little bit of an insight already in terms of going around the office and constantly talking to your team as to the reason, the why you're there and how you want to deliver that. As you've grown, what measures have you put in place to ensure that the whole of organisation buys into that culture?
I think by being authentic. I think that I would like to think that you could come here and walk through Wave Learning now and speak to everybody, and they would sort of almost, Meredith and I own it, my daughter and I own it, and we're very the same, very different. But we're very strong. We're resilient, and I think that what we do here is say to our staff, and it just has happened that we're all women. Right. So we're all women under a roof, and like someone here today. One of my staff it's their wedding anniversary, and she just had flowers arrive. So, they were taken upstairs to her at her desk, and as soon as I could, I ran up there to have a look. And it's a family, and even if and some people need to some people arrive here and I feel that they have never worked in a culture like this before, where they're supported, if you don't make a mistake, there's a problem. People go to work and you can't make a mistake. You live in fear of making a mistake. And I've worked under principals like that who have been abusive, to me as a young teacher. And I've thought, well, I've taken all those experiences of being belittled and humiliated, and I've just thought, I know how that made me feel. And if I ever had the chance to employ people or lead people, I would never, ever do that to them, because you reduce people by doing that. And my job is to build people up. And our staff are just magnificent. I am there for them if they're having, we give our staff all their leave, but we give our staff 3 days extra leave a year, and we call it, if the wheels fall off leave, basically. And if they need it for a sick child, even if it's for 2 hours to take them to the doctor, or if they don't have children, if you have a dog that needs to go to a vet, or if your dog passed away and you need to grieve for your dog, that's what that leave is there for you. So it's all about caring for people. Yep. And then when you care for them, they care for you, and they work really, really hard. Yep. And taking them on our journey of, and I hate that expression, but that's basically what it is, of having a meeting with Meredith like I did this morning for an hour, a planning meeting for the future, and then going to the staff and saying, this is where we want to go. This is what the future looks like for us. It's exciting for us. And if it's exciting for us, hopefully you will see that that you're excited by it. Yeah. So, and we have a very eclectic staff, and I think that that's great too. And they come from all kinds of different backgrounds. And I just think, Mark, they sit here and they say to me, they're very nervous on their first day, and we've interviewed them, and we get hundreds and hundreds. We put an application out, we get hundreds and hundreds of applications, and then we land on them. It might not be that they gave the best, they mightn't have had the best resume, they mightn't have done the best interview, but it's just something about them that we just saw would fit us and our family. And they say to me, I'm just really glad I got the job. And I'll say, I don't know why you're here yet, but we're about to find out.
Nice,
and then
I love that.
We'll find a skill that I didn't know that they had, or they just add something. Some are shy, some aren't shy, and just when you put it all together, it's just, I can't wait to come to work every morning. It's just lovely.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's really, really nice to hear. Okay, we're going to just change tact a little bit. We're going to find out a couple of things about you, all right? So you're in a leadership role. You're also in a leadership role in the community as well as a counsellor. I think you've been a counsellor since 2016, is that right?
Uh-huh.
Yep. What caused you to have the desire to take what you do in education and way of learning and transpose that over into a leadership role in the community?
This is really funny because I don't ever talk about way of learning and being a counsellor in the same thing, in an interview, or because I'm very, very careful about not
joining the two together.
Yes.
It's more about the motivation. So it's more about the motivation and it's a leadership thing. So I'm just interested to know what your motivation was to do that.
Yeah, I think I love challenges. I love to learn. I grew up in a household with very, very, we weren't well off, but we had a small bookcase full of books, and my father was very, very bright and had to leave school when he was in year 7 in the Depression, and later he found out that when I was 16 he did a whole series of tests at Sydney Uni because he had an inkling that he might have been bright, and he found out that he was in Mensa. So and all he wanted to do was to know that he was bright, and then he put that piece of paper in the drawer and went back to printing the Sydney Morning Herald. So I was in a home where if there was something raised at the dinner table and he didn't know the answer to it, he would just put his knife and fork down and go and get the encyclopedias out and read them. So I was taught always learn, always challenge yourself. What if I got 97 out of 100 for a test, he'd say, that's great. Now let's sit down and look at what those 3 marks were that you didn't get. So he focused me on more and more and more. And I think that in 2016, I just finished, I was running a national charity, and I'd run it for 10 years. And and the business was growing rapidly, and I was approached to run for council, and I saw it as an opportunity. And I think in life you need to see opportunities when they come, and people don't see opportunities sometimes. And I was sort of at the point where the charity couldn't have grown any more. It was all consuming, and I really needed to focus on the business. And it was wonderful. It was just wonderful. It was a great charity. We did great work, but the time had come. And then simultaneously I got the offer to run for council, and I looked at it and thought, I loved being in a classroom. I loved being a leader of children. And then I loved being a leader of a business. And I thought that what I could do as a principal, I could make changes for the children in a school. It's such a privilege, such an honour to be able to do that. But then I thought, what could I do for children in a city? And that was why I made that decision. It was not, oh wow, I can be a counsellor. It's what can I give you?
Yeah.
That's what I think when I get up every day. What can I give my staff? What can I give everybody in my life? I live my life through gratitude.
Nice.
So I grew up, I was adopted. So I was born of gratitude.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, what can I give? What can I give the city? And straight away, the minute I was elected, the very first council meeting, I began. And if you go back and you look through my notices of motion to Campbelltown Council, you'll see that they aren't about roundabouts and roads, and they're about probably most things all lead back to children, disability, or mental health or domestic violence. So I've taken a bit of myself,
yep,
and given it back to the city of Campbelltown.
That's great, and that's what community leadership is all about. You did a lot of reading when you were younger. So, what was your favourite book when you were a child?
The Mysterious Term at Merlands. I was allowed one book a year. That's all Mum and Dad could afford. And when I was a child, it wasn't a matter of just going into a bookshop. So when I chose a book, I had to wait 6 weeks for my book. And then when I got it, it came in the mail, and I didn't touch the book. I wasn't the first person. It was Mum had this really thick plastic, like the thickest plastic I've ever seen. And she would cover my book in that plastic. And The Mysterious Term at Merlands was about an English girls' boarding school. And I still have it, and the plastic is on it. And I've never taken the plastic off it. I've never touched the cover. That's awesome. Yeah, so I treasure books, and I tell, and so I'm, as counsellor, I'm the representative on the to the council, to the state library, and I do a lot of work with our libraries. It's where I walk in and I'm at home when I walk into our libraries. So yeah, my father, I tell the librarians at Campbelltown the story all the time about my father saying, go and get your overcoat one night, and I must have been about 7. And I never went anywhere, especially at night, and especially not with my father. So I went and got my overcoat. It was freezing cold winter's night. And we lived at Canley Heights, and he put me in the car and he said, we're going somewhere. He didn't tell me where we were going. And he drove, just me and him, and he drove, and I remember the sound. He pulled up outside this shed, and we got out, and I still remember the crunching of his feet on the gravel. And we walked up to the door of this shed, and he opened the shed door, and I walked in, and I saw floor to ceiling shelves of books, and he said, Margaret, this is a library. Nice. And it was just like, wow, wow. So and so for me to go to a library, I needed him to drive me. So I want children to have books at their fingertips, and to fall in love with books, and to fall into books. So yeah, the mysterious term at Merlands, because I've moved house so many times, and I treasure it and I pack it carefully, and yeah, it's very, very special to me.
Yeah, I've got one of those too, and books are very important in our household as well. I'm going to wrap this up with 9 final questions. All right, these are quick fire. All right, very, very quick fire. So James Lipton used to ask these on Inside the Actor Studio, so I've stolen them. So number 1, what is your favourite word?
Gratitude.
Love it. What is your least favourite word?
Can't.
What turns you on?
Learning.
What turns you off?
Toxicity.
What sound or noise do you love?
The ocean.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Screaming.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Journalism.
Oh. What profession would you not like to do?
Oh. I think that's impossible to ask. To answer. I wouldn't like to be a doctor, I don't think. Maybe a doctor. Yeah.
It's a tough one. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well, I do think heaven exists. So I would want him to say, your mum and dad are waiting for you.
Nice. Very, very nice. Margaret, thank you very much for your time today. People can connect with Wave Learning. What's the website address?
Wavelearning.com.au.
Nice and simple. That's the way it is for most people these days. Enjoy your week this week. It's going to be a little bit wet, but I think there'll be some sunshine at the end of the week during the weekend. Say hi to your team for me from Let's Talk Macarthur. Macarthur, stay safe and look after each other.
Thanks, Mark.